Hey, welcome to the Cyber Savvy Woman, where women business owners reclaim their power in the digital world. We shatter the myth that cybersecurity is too complex to master and transform protection strategies into clear, actionable guidance. This is your digital empowerment sanctuary, where cyber fear becomes cyber confidence. Whether you're protecting client trust as a therapist or safeguarding financial data as an advisor, you'll hear from women founders who've conquered digital challenges and security experts who speak your language. Every woman leading a business deserves to feel unshakable in her digital decisions, no matter her technical background. Are you ready to stop letting cybersecurity intimidate you and start letting it elevate you? Here's your host, Rachele Schainker.
Welcome back to the Cyber Savvy Woman, where we talk about practical ways women can protect themselves, their businesses, and their futures in this increasingly digital world. I'm your host, Rachele Schainker, a Silicon Valley technologist and owner of the award winning managed service provider CMIT Solutions of San Mateo. Joining me today is London Wolfe, a business strategist and cognitive leadership specialist who helps founders, organizations, and educators identify what's not working structurally and fix it. Their work focuses on reducing design fatigue, miscommunication, and burnout by aligning systems and leadership with how people actually think and operate. London, I'm excited to have you here on Cyber Savvy Woman. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. I was like, I feel something a little off. So I was like, let me just fix my piercing really quickly. So now we're back on track.
Yeah, no problem.
But thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. You've worn a lot of hats, education, web design, mindfulness, coaching. What kind of thread do you see that's connecting everything?
Oh, that's such a rich question. Um, for me, I feel like life is a series of a journey. It's like a journey, and it's kind of like a webbing and webbing. And so like you can be brought onto this path and you're gaining a skill set and you think that's where you need to be permanently, but you're just visiting in that area because you'll need it in another place. But I'm also a firm believer in natural talents and being able to utilize natural talents in your career as well. And that's kind of the basis of everything I've ever done. Like being a small child, I was just naturally drawn to teaching, and then it just kind of unfolded from there.
Yeah, I love that. Was there a moment where you realized, I maybe don't want to necessarily motivate people, but I'm here to redesign the system? Like when you realized you kind of wanted to help, you know, reorganize things. How did that come around?
Well, I would have to go back to my childhood again because I've always had a natural ability to kind of see what was missing or what needed to be there. Highly creative thinker. So it's like even as a child, like second grade, I won peacemaker for the entire school. Now on to like being a problem solver, but I wouldn't say that I owned it. And I would even say it to this day, like I just always identify with being like a doer and just someone that just does things. So I never really owned that part. It just came natural and I just did it. But as I got older, more, inner work and understanding of self is like, oh, okay, well, we can put a title on it if we want and say, yeah, okay, I'm not on to that. But it just always been.
Yeah, I hear that, I hear that. What is one kind of misconception, people may have, when they hear strategy, and you may help people kinda come up with a strategy, help organizations. What do you see? Do you ever kinda get, like, people put up their hands and are like, "No, I don't wanna," or what do you see? Or do most people embrace the word strategy and, wanting to implement something new?
Well, I think like okay, having that background in education and realizing that everyone thinks differently and trying to find a community style that will process to you naturally. But I feel like a lot of people associate strategy with something that's hard, overwhelming, something that requires a lot of practicality. When it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Sometimes your strategy could be implementing more self-care into your practice. Sometimes your strategy could being more creative in your practice. Like it doesn't have to be so hard. And so that's one misconception that I see people have.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair. When you work with clients, what generally is driving them towards you? Like, what is their, you know, what point have they reached? Not, I don't want to say problem, but challenge. What has happened in their world that they're like, okay, we need to get some help in here. What do you normally see as like a commonality there?
Feeling overwhelmed and confused and kind of like lost in terms of, how do I communicate what I'm offering? Uh, are my services in alignment with what I actually want to do? Because I tend to work with a lot of people similar to myself, not necessarily have to be, who need to feel connected to the work that they provide. And so if you're offering something that you don't feel connected to, you're not going to give it your all. So how can we revamp this to feel in alignment with you, but also help others that you want to reach? So just reaching that point, like wanting someone who can understand how I am. Like that's just me speaking as someone who's looking for me. Like I need someone who understands how I am, how I think, how my energy levels are, and not just overwhelm me with advice I can find on Google.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like really take the time. But the sweet spot in that is like not just someone who understands me as a business owner, but understands business as well, and can also provide the tools to help me reach my actual goals. So that's kind of the point.
Love that. I love that. You shared with me when we had our pre-call conversation, you like to build around how people think, process information, and manage energy. What does that mean in practice? Or like, how does that show up? How would we recognize that?
And so first, before I can guide you, I have to learn you, right? So I do have like a series of questions. Don't feel like you're taking a questionnaire. It just feels like I'm genuinely getting to know you. That lets me understand, what are your creative hours, right? Like how do you like to process information, right? So are you some like if I was to give you information, would audio work better than me writing it out? Just taking actual time. And then from there, I kind of fine tune the action steps that I give to clients because I want it to resonate. Like that is the biggest issue with a lot of business advice. It can be very good advice, but if it doesn't resonate with how you receive information and you try to apply it and it doesn't work, now you think you're failing. You're not failing, you're just doing it in a way that isn't wired for you. So that's how it kind of looks like introduction to who you are, a fine tuning of action steps, and just I guess I would say like breaking things down in a simpler step.
Yeah. And then do you work with teams? Like, what if my steps are different than your steps? If you're working with a team and you're like, oh gosh, everyone is kind of going in their own direction. Can you find a way where you find, something that they can all kind of grow together? Or like, is that part of the process to kind of get them all aligned and understand how each person may work differently?
Now that right there makes my heart tingle because that's one of my favorite things to do. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. It designs that's basically called cognitive framework. And what that does is it's like four different categories that you don't have to necessarily fit into primarily like all the time. It could be depending on the task or whatever, but it helps those in teams be able to identify their blind spots, their strengths, and their communication styles. And that kind of opens up a dialogue for the team to say, oh, like when this person, you know, I perceive them to possibly be ignoring me, but actually, because they fit into this category, they weren't ignoring me. The way that they were processing it was different. So I enjoy that work because it allows you to. I was just explaining this to someone else. Like, it's not where it's like, you go to a lot of trainings, right? And you're like, oh, this is something else for us to do. You're not apply it. But this one to me feels more like a aha because you're learning not just about yourself dynamic, but as an individual, which kind of brings that humanity into the workspace. And it's like, now I understand why this leader was behaving this way. And so now we can find a commonality. And I also like to base it on real time issues within that field that you're in. So we can really bring it home. So yeah, I can help the teams too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because I mean, I would imagine that would probably be, like, if it's one to one, you could really, like, narrow in, but that is a gift to be able to bring a whole team on board. What type of clients are your best fit for your approach? What do you look for when somebody approaches you, to make sure you guys are a good fit? What kind of organization or their culture?
So I like to work with organizations who are experiencing friction, between different departments or struggle to mediate issues. I've done executive coaching for people in director positions in different sectors, like government and education, who were having a hard time. Processing the leadership that was given to them. So I like to work with people in those areas. Um, I like to work with new leaders who are brought into companies as well, because a lot of times basic in-house training does not cover a lot of the people skills. And again, me bringing this new approach that out of the cognitive lens to it,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
um, where we can, right, where we can actually understand ourselves. I think that makes more of a benefit for leaders. But on an individual level, leaders who are overthinkers, leaders who are visionaries, leaders who are heart centered, led, who just need some kind of support in strengthening that leadership, but also understanding the team dynamic. Because without a team, you're not a leader, you're just an individual.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Um, what does sustainable performance look like for someone who's analytical but like easily gets overloaded? What would be some tips for them to kind of protect themselves? Like know they can dig in and like get into this, but like if you're not careful, it could, you could get burned out or overloaded. What kind of would you have any suggestions for a person like that, which I would fall into that category? Like how do we protect ourselves so we don't get burned out, I guess.
That's a great question. So before we can get to the burnout to me is an extension of analysis paralysis, because we're overthinking at that. And overthinking comes from a sense of wanting to be in control as well, right? So the that would be being able to release control and trusting others to do things. So delegation, right, would be important, but that whole leadership, the cognitive leadership framework comes in, because knowing that Sarah, Jesse, and James might be a better fit for that role because you understand how they're cognitively wired, or that particular task, you have a better chance of delegating to them opposed to just blindly to someone, right? Another thing is breaking things down into simpler steps. A lot of times when you're overly analytical, you see the whole big picture and you're in there. And now it's the what, all areas, right? It's like finding a way to break it down, but then also getting those thoughts out, because if not, they suppress. Now you got the sleepless nights, the stress is coming, like all of those things, and the worry, and it's exhausting. It becomes very exhausting, right? So find strategies outside of the performance, just as a self, to alleviate those. So I have a tendency to be an overly analytical person. I'll write it down. I'll write down everything that I'm seeing, sensing, and feeling. I'll, even if I go on walks, I will do like a voice note, because once those thoughts, I believe firmly in energy. Once those thoughts are out, it's relief. And now we can to think better and strategize, right? And then the urgency. There's always this sense of urgency when you're overly analytical, right? I got to get it done. I got to do it now. So finding tasks and things that kind of bring you to the present moment helps. So those are some I would give to some.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I love a brain dump, right? I'm always writing lists, writing and it does. I do get that sense of relief of just, getting it down on paper. Maybe I'm not taking any action on it today, but there is that release. And sometimes I'm always shocked at when I kind of do my brain dump, how short the list is. Because in my mind it feels so huge, but it's like half a page. It's like, oh, okay.
I'm glad you, but it feels great because our mind, because we're trying to, our mind tends to relate to something that it's already experienced, right? So when it's thrusted into something completely new and it has nothing to connect with, it's an overload, right? So it needs knowledge because it's not only our thinking, it's our emotions, and that gets stored in our bodies. And then that's not going to be good for us to do whatever we need to do. So just being able to acknowledge those things and taking a moment, like celebrating what we're doing. Like, even if you just, yes, I brain dumped. It's not in here no more. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, let's talk a little bit about like cognitive leadership styles, if you will. What happens, how can you be a leader, if you have, helping teams prevent miscommunication, before it turns into conflict. Let's say you have two teams maybe that are functioning differently, but they function well there. How, what do we need to be aware of, or what kind of scaffolding can we put in to make sure communication, is as clear as possible so it doesn't kind of devolve into a conflict? That makes sense.
Well, firstly, like me also having a background, I've managed teams as well. So I do have that first-hand account. Um, Making sure everyone remembers why we are here, right? It's natural. Like, I don't believe in a robotic workspace. I don't believe that it's going to work, but I believe in providing support to prevent it and also providing tools if we're already in it, right? Because going into anything with teams, yeah, we have the cognitive awareness, but sometimes people have things outside of work that can be impactful as well, right? So it's just being able to have eye to spot things that can, you know, turn into bigger issues, right? But the basis of providing a space where people in a workspace feel comfortable to express themselves, acknowledging, their strengths and how they're wired, giving them tools that shows them how they're wired. How many people are unaware of their cognitive strengths, right? Or don't have a direct framework that they can identify with. It's so many different tests out here, and it feels cool, and people don't always want to do that. But if you can provide the frameworks where it feels humanized, people are more able to process it. So having that space of empathy is important too. Like, I understand us having big tasks and things of that nature, but if you continue to push people and push people and push people, that's going to cause an issue in productivity right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. What is the biggest leadership blind spot you see when they're growing teams? Like, so we're in growth mode, we're adding more team members. What should a leader kind of be looking for, or making sure as they're growing a team that it's a well balanced team, if you will? Or is there a blind spot, or do you just see? Yeah, tell me about that. What you see?
I feel like at some point when we're getting to growth, right, we can become removed from the human aspect, right? And just be so on productivity, which leads to burnout, which leads to dismissing certain issues, especially when you're neurodivergent. Like, we must speak on that. Um, uh, 'Cause just in a regular workspace, I've done, what was it? I had a round table last year for late diagnosed women professionals, and not just women professionals are affected by this, but because I was late diagnosed and I'm a woman professional, I just wanted to come together with that womanhood, right? Um, on a regular basis in an overwhelming environment, you're already masking, right? There's not a lot of accommodations standing, right? And with the taken away of like DEI and things of that nature, like there's even less support for people who are neurodivergent or have some kind of accessibility. Uh, and so, you already are dealing with that, which can lead to underperforming because of pressure, right? Rejection sensitivity. So you're not speaking up, or you're taking on more than your fair share to meet the demand. So I wouldn't necessarily call it greed, but it can be seen as greed because you're so focused on the goal that you're forgetting the components, which is the teams that make it happen. Like check-ins are very important if you can. I understand with big companies can be hard, but a little questionnaire and a tally up system so you can see like what is working, what's not, really good to do.
Yeah, I like that. Are there, what are some common ways high functioning neurodivergent people, accidentally, sometimes they may burn themselves out. Like, how do we take care of ourselves to make sure that we don't burn out? Because I'm also neurodivergent
Oh, great.
and I'm battling burnout constantly, right? And it's like, what are there any little tricks or not tricks, but just, things that I could be doing to help manage myself better or be aware of?
Yes, I got tingles again. I love this question. For one, building a relationship with the way you are wired, your energy, your process. It's a beautiful blossoming and unfolding, right? Putting you back into your life. You see, like making sure that things are in alignment with how you want them to be. Advocacy. That one in all bold letters, not only within the work, in your relationships, in your family. Advocate for your needs to be met. But in order for you to advocate for your needs to be met, you need to understand what your needs are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And then there's that whole trauma undoing of worthiness, speaking up, people pleasing, like all of that has to be rewired so that you can feel more comfortable speaking your truth. You can feel more comfortable taking space. You can feel more comfortable self authentically. So before we can go out face the issue, we have to internally understand who we are and what's in the way and redo that relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I'm working on, boundaries are hard for me. Like, it's hard for me to make boundaries, so I that's something that I'm working on is, personally and professionally, right? Is, like, making sure I have good boundaries at work and like, it's like we're all supportive, but it is a workplace. Like I don't necessarily as the boss or as the manager need to know, everything that's happening in your personal life. Like I want to care about it, but I also like there needs to be a boundary of like what's happening. I don't know. It's interesting because I immediately want to like hear about it, care about it. How can I fix it? And it's that as the owner role, it's I have to be very careful about that. It's a different dynamic because 'cause I'm used to being on teams where we're all kind of peers and, you wanna be supportive and be, and it's I've gotten myself into a couple little not jams, but just noticing about myself, that I have to do this differently.
Well, that's to me, that's number one, the awareness, right? It's like what I'm hearing is you're a nurturer, right? And so, nurturing, if you're overly nurturing, that can be tied to a different blind spot within you. Where did I have to overcompensate for love? Like, where was I needed more than to be, right? Like, I have to fix this. Where's that pressure coming from, right? And like, had a client, and this is all going to tie back to you because I'm going to give you some advice as well. I,
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
I had a client one time who struggled with, there was someone in another department who was causing them some issues. But once we really worked through it, she realized that this person was actually a blessing in disguise. They were a mirror to her, to show her some more something from childhood that she was still working. And so very, very, very interesting for sure. And what else? So back to you and what you have.
Yeah. No, it's not about me.
No, it's not. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We're here.
Okay, alright, for a minute. I guess for a minute, yes.
No, no, I was like, no, it's not. No, it is about you. Like I want to offer. So if you're dealing with someone, I remember having situations when I was a manager, and I knew that there were some people who were like they weren't performing as well as I know that they could. And so what I did was in the beginning of the week, um, I would do a goal post, right? What is your goal for the job and what's your personal goal, right? And so that kind of helped them to feel more a part of the team, because a lot of people on the team will hide their personal stuff because you're thinking you're going to get fired, like depending on the dynamic of the work culture, right? And but I took that approach and say, "Hey, are you okay?" And they told me what was going on. So I was like, I can't fix what's going on. I can't put myself in that position, right? Because we do have to maintain that boundary. But is there anything that I can put in place here that can support you? Yeah. Or if I notice you differently, is it because of that? Instead of me saying, nah, you job, this is a different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that because it's a nice I think that would fit nicely with me because I wanna care, I do care, it's so it could be a good way to kind of, yeah, I'll try that out. Thanks, London, I appreciate that.
No problem. Let me know how it go, because what it does is I'm acknowledging that there's something extra going on, but I also acknowledge that we do have that professional boundary, and I also acknowledge we're here, but I acknowledge you're human too, right? It's a lot of acknowledgement.
Exactly, exactly.
How can I support you doing your job, or what do you need? Do you need, like, working in education is, you tend to have more of the empathy, right? It's like more, I don't know, it's just something about being in education where it's more people feeling, right? And so, hey, do you need to talk to me for 5 minutes after work? Do you want to vent? And I had people take me on that offer, and it was like, thank you for seeing me. And then the next day come in and it's like, well, now I feel better because I feel like I'm someone working here and not just someone working here. There's a difference in that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's really that's lovely. All right, let's switch a little bit and talk about maybe a little bit about technology. What would you say is a good example of technology maybe amplifying a blind spot, maybe like a CRM or AI tools? Do you ever see technology kind of getting in the way of things?
Well, with anything you have, if you do it in excess, it can always be bad, right? Anything in life. I find a lot of like AI tools, especially as a neurodivergent, to be very helpful. Especially if you lot like sometimes our brains can move too fast, and you're like, I've always been, but I do like to use it for brainstorming. I still my own tools, and everything is still original, but I like to use it as a thought partner, or especially if you're a solopreneur. We're already so many hats, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
We still need humans, you know. Like, I still enjoy talking with someone and working through something for sure. But if it comes a thought partner or needing help with a flyer, like, I find it to be very helpful. I really do. I tech girl too. Like, I was creating basic websites since I was like 20. So I love technology, and it is helpful in business, and a lot of our businesses are online, right? Um, the downside, I'll speak specifically into being neurodivergent, is it can be overwhelming, because there's so many different technology tools and so many, and wanting to keep up, and then the way that social media has changed, and you know you're competing with people who are more skilled at creating content, and the algorithm, and that becomes pressure and suppression there. So that would be one of the downsides of social media technology.
When you talked about, like, kind of, tools with a lot of features or something, do you have a kind of a guide that you use for yourself when you're looking for a new technology, solution? How do you pick which tools you're gonna use? Or, is there a framework that you have in mind or something you use when you're evaluating new tools?
That's a great question. Yes. So I love to research before I implement anything. I want to make sure that it's a tool that's good. I want to make sure that it's not too complicated, that's easier to learn, because if it's too complicated, my brain, like, I can't. Um, or I mean, unless it's something that I necessarily have to learn, then I have to like break it down to simpler steps. I have to be ready for it. But I tend to find things that complement my learning style. Um, yeah, things that are like visually appealing,
Yeah, nice.
that's easy to use, not too many small things, and you got to click them and click them and click them to find something that I'm confused. It has to be accessible for me. Um, yeah, so I guess I do have a framework. What is it that I need? What's I go on Google and I pick the best one. Like, I go read reviews. I am a reading girl. And then we go from there.
Yeah. What do you see the impact of, if an owner is, like, always switching tools? How does that impact their company, their team members? You know, if people are, "We're gonna implement this, and then we're gonna implement that." What's the, outcome of, somebody who's running it, like, in that manner?
Scattered.
Yes. Yes.
Scattered. Because what I'm feeling is, instead of putting so many tools out there as like this is definite, like that person should do a bit more trial runs with their tools, in like small bunches, and getting feedback before you give it to the whole crew, because people are going to get comfortable with learning one thing, and then you're having them having to learn something else. Now people are feeling burnt out. Brain is overwhelmed and nothing is getting done. So it's like, to create a better strategy, I would say test it out with smaller crews first, and then moving forward to something else. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I love that. Um, well, London, we always wrap up our Cyber Savvy Woman podcast with a quick little rapid fire. I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're just going to share your first answer that comes to your mind. Um, do you like clarity or speed? What's your preference?
Clarity.
Clarity, yeah. Systems or intuition?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Intuition.
Yeah, me too. Me too. What is one business habit that can reduce kind of that overwhelming when we start to feel overwhelmed? What can we do to, tamper that down or kind of take a breath?
Step back for a moment. That's the first thing to do. Step back for a moment, and then go back to it and assess the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Do you prefer a PC or a Mac? What kind of computer do you use?
I like PCs because I've had them, but I'm about to graduate to a Mac, so we're gonna have to revisit that question.
Oh, there you go, there you go. Alright, let me know how that goes. And let's see, what's one more? Um, what is one boundary that we can set to protect our energy as a leader? Like, how can we, conserve our energy, if you will?
Time management,
Oh, I like that, I like that. And then what does being a cyber savvy woman mean to you?
empowerment.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh, so great. London, thank you so much for joining me today. I truly loved our conversation. Your perspective on cognitive leadership, sustainable performance, and building businesses that actually align with how people think is such a powerful reminder that success isn't about pushing harder. It's about creating systems, structures, and strategy that work with us and not against us. I especially appreciate your insight that technology doesn't maybe necessarily always fix our blind spots, can amplify them. And it's such an important takeaway for founders, leaders, and teams navigating growth in a digital world. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Cyber Savvy Woman, where we explore real conversations about technology, leadership, and cybersecurity. If you'd like to connect with London and learn more about their cognitive leadership style framework, um, and their different alignment programs, be sure to check out the show notes for links and resources for today's episodes. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow, rate, and share the show with another woman in business who could benefit from more clarity, better systems, and more sustainable way of working. Until next time, stay cyber savvy, stay empowered, and keep building a business that truly works for you. Thank you, London.
you for having me.
The Cyber Savvy Woman podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Hey, thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.